Hello and welcome to Real Talk Office Hours Hunting for Silver Linings for this Friday, July 24, 2020. Hosted today by myself, Corey Hart. We have George Gitsanos. We're in Grand Rapids, Michigan. We have our very special guest today, Jose Carlos, over in Angola. We've been running around the world, checking in with Startup Grind chapter directors, and really excited to get back on the African continent. We're brought to you overall by Startup Grind, the world's largest startup community. We have 600 plus chapters in over 125 countries, and we operate with a mission to educate, inspire, and connect. Now, this pandemic has been and will continue to be the great global leveler, and as entrepreneurs, we need to do our very best for our businesses, our teams, our families, and to do so, we need to be informed, rational, analytical, and rigorous in our thinking. We should also learn to control our biases as they emerge in various circumstances. We invite everyone to join us live every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday as we track the intersection of facts, biases, and action through our review of global financial markets alongside the check-ins with Real Talk and Real Talk with Startup Grind chapter directors, entrepreneurs, and ecosystem stakeholders from across the world. And we do this because nobody has a crystal ball, but if we keep our eyes and ears open and pay attention, we may be able to see around the bend and with some luck, spot the silver linings that are around every cloud. Now, if you miss the live events, you can view the recordings at startupgrind.com/grand-rapids. And now before I introduce George for the global market update, a bit of housekeeping. Comments made and views expressed by all participants in this podcast are not intended to invite or incite individuals, entrepreneurs, or investors to buy or sell financial assets, real assets, commodities, futures, and or options. The purpose of this podcast is to educate and to inform, not to trade or to invest. If you feel compelled to trade or invest, please call your broker. And remember, however, risk is everywhere, even when you think you're not taking a risk. So with that, it's my pleasure to introduce George Gitsanos to get us started with the market update.
Thank you, Corey. Jose Carlos Santos, and welcome to Real Talk.
Thank you.
I was preparing for my notes today, I was listening to the BBC World Service interview with the governor of the state of Maryland here in the US, who is the Republican governor in a preponderantly Democratic state. To make the long story short, it is a pity, it is sad that all around the world, this pandemic has become a political football, and parties are using it for benefits that have nothing to do with the patients, the populations, and those who get affected most. As we have always said, the financial markets are a tool of letting us know what is possible, what is happening as we speak. In other words, the present. At the same time, however, the markets are a great discounting mechanism of the future. Every piece of news is analyzed by the participants in the market, including entrepreneurs and investors in startups, in early stage companies, in developing companies, which is really our universe. And these signals suggest for the time being that we are now entering a second level of uncertainty. And allow me to refer to what we said back in March, that the overall environment is exposing not only fissures, not only weaknesses, but significant gaps in our ability to deal with fundamental issues. And nothing more is clearer than at the time of a political year here in the US, where these mistakes, gaps, successes become overblown. When we look at the currency markets, I'll first stop and look at the financial markets as a whole. We are able to see that the dollar remains weak. The tit for tat between the US and China is to some extent a contributing factor. However, what we're seeing is that investors are concerned about the size of the rescue package number 2 that will come from Congress. The lower level is that of essentially Mitch McConnell and his Republican colleagues, about $1 trillion. The higher level comes from the House of Representatives, which is about $3 trillion. So between 1 and 3, the markets are beginning to see that there is going to be a lot of liquidity floating around in the US. New money is going to be printed. And that's why the dollar against the euro is trading at 116. Look at the yen. The yen is trading dramatically under 107. It's actually 1.58. That is a major change that the Bank of Japan has allowed the yen to appreciate. I don't know for how long this is going to last, but with sterling at 127, 128, we're beginning to see that the exit from the dollar is becoming a little bit of a stampede. The Canadian is 134, the US Hong Kong at 775, not a major change there. The won is still at around 1200. For the most part, however, the weakness of the dollar is maintained. When we look at our the bond market, what we are seeing is a major rally. And what do we need by major rally? Well, starting from Asia, Japan, of course, 0, Australia, 0.86, New Zealand, roughly 0.8, Hong Kong, 0.3, Singapore, 0.8, South Korea, 1.3, and India, 5.8. In Southeast Asia, we haven't seen this huge rally in bond markets, in the 10-year bond market. The reason is because they have not had such a significant intervention yet. Although the central banks are intervening, as we have discussed before, both Japan and Australia have developed what we call the yield control strategy, whereby they target the yield of specific maturity bonds in order to maintain cheap, low-cost funding as they issue these bonds. In Europe, however, this is unprecedented. The rally in Europe is big. Italy, at 1%. 10-year bonds in Italy trading at 1%. That is unbelievable. For those who have been looking into the fixed income market, Italy has rallied. This is the weakest economic state in Europe, almost in temporary abasement and near default since the 60s. And yet investors have flocked in because it seems that the efforts that were put in place, the decisions that are being put in place as we speak, between and among the European leaders, are likely to lead to a rebalancing and a consistent effort to support a unified Europe. Greece at 1.05%. Again, this is the lowest yields that we've seen in 10-year bonds in these countries for generations. Switzerland, minus 0.5, Germany, minus 0.5, UK, almost 0%. 10-year yields in the UK, close to 0%. Again, the lowest yields in a generation. Let's move over to North America. And in North America, the 10-year treasury is under 6%. Canada, 0.5, Brazil, 6.8, and Mexico, 5.7. So in other words, the bond markets are telling us exactly what reality is telling us. There's plenty of danger around the market. Don't look only at how you invest your capital, but be aware of the fact that the return of your capital and the return on your capital are important. And this is why in this part of Real Talk, we'll always caution our entrepreneurs and our investors to be extremely focused, to be extremely cognizant of the discrepancies in the financial markets, and at least not to focus only on the preferred indices, i.e. equities. The picture is getting complex, the picture is getting very volatile, and historically, August has been a month of crisis. So let's see what Jackson Hole brings us this year. The meeting of the Federal Reserve and global governors in informal meeting in Jackson Hole, Wyoming. It's going to take place in August. And let's see what the executives keep on telling us about the state of the markets. The third stop in our efforts to look at the financial markets are essentially commodities. And we always start with the energy sector, which for our speaker today, for Carlos, Jose Carlos Santos, is a familiar story. Angola is an oil-rich country. West Texas Intermediate comfortably at $41, the Brent at 43, natural gas back up at 1.8. The glut in oil is not reflected in these markets. These markets, the oil market, is telling us that the agreement between Saudi Arabia and Russia, between OPEC and Russia, seems to be holding up for the time being, and that's why we're seeing the prices where they are. It is striking, however, how within 4 months we've gone from minus $40 a barrel to plus $40 a barrel. Gold is close to 2000 again, across the 2018 and 1900 barrier earlier on. It's trading with a tremendous appetite to go higher. As we have said in previous instances, fear of debasement of the currency and fear of essentially protecting one's assets is leading to more and more investors, including gold, in their portfolio. On the other hand, copper is also rising, and that is comforting, at least to those of us who still think that manufacturing plays a role in the global economy, which in fact it does. Copper prices, significantly higher than the lows, are suggesting that the manufacturing sector is continuing to grow. On agriculture, we look at the grains, and here we have smaller changes. These changes seem to be cosmetic because every time you have a rally, there is a sell-off, the shorts coming back in. We have a huge, huge crop. All the data that we see on a daily, weekly, and monthly basis, the reports by WASDE suggest that this crop is healthy. We also see that there is very little in the relationship between China and the US that will lift these prices. In other words, the Chinese purchasing of grains is still very limited. So against this background, I would like to repeat what Corey said at the beginning of our presentation. The reason we cover the market is not to convince you to take up a trading position. Do not, I repeat, do not look at past as a good indicator of the future. We are at a very unusual period of human history, where, as Jared Diamond has said, the elites are called in to make decisions about how we continue on this planet. And with this, back to Corey.
Thanks, George. Appreciate the update as always. And you mentioned the second wave of uncertainty that the globe is currently in, and certainly entrepreneurs and investors are feeling that very, very personally. So, and we might touch on some of these aspects as we talk to Jose today. So with that, I really do want...
Before we go, Corey, just a point about uncertainty. Look at the map. In front of you, you have all the equities markets in the globe, all of them. The only green is the Budapest Stock Exchange, which is up by 0.24%, and the volatility index. Everything else is in the red. This has been very rare since the onset of the COVID crisis. And it is a clear indication that unless the decision making becomes more consistent and more sophisticated, the long-term effects of the crisis, of the pandemic, are going to be compounded by second-level effects. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. So I do want to get to our guest and Jose Carlos. Thank you so much for joining us today. Appreciate the generosity of your time, my friend.
Okay, thank you so much, Corey, and thank you, George, for the update.
And so we do like to get a nice little background on our chapter directors individually. So if you could give us a nice introduction of your history and background, maybe what made you into an entrepreneur, and then how you found Startup Grind.
Okay, so I'm Jose Carlos Santos from Angola. Father. I like to characterize myself as a social changer that loves to tackle problems. So I started entrepreneurship around 9 years ago. I quit my banking career. I was handling corporate banking and private banking here in Luanda, and I quit the career and got into entrepreneurship with a company that I founded. It was not easy to accept my first failure. I think the company is going down soon. But at the time, you know, when I was around 10 years ago, almost 10 years ago, I was young, but I wanted to make the change, you know. So we didn't have a history impacting, you know, startups and businesses locally. And how did I get through Startup Grind? I met some chapter directors in entrepreneurship congress overseas, and they introduced me to the spectacular network that we belong to. And yes, I applied and brought Startup Grind, which has been engaging, not as much as I would love to, entrepreneurs locally, to tell their stories, to share, and to build a community, a strong community. More about myself into entrepreneurship. So I consider myself not a one-stop shop. So other than Acelera Angola, which is a local accelerator, we've been running some programs on fintechs, and then we run programs for entrepreneurship really at the early stage. But then we also, what we did before was actually, you know, trying to put these businesses into a broader dimension on scaling this market, because this market has some specialities coming from before, and is a huge city. So we're almost 10 million. So we'll be 10 million in 5 years. So it has a lot of demand, but little offer. So scaling these companies locally, we try to help them out either to open up to broader ranges of networks of investors, or with capacity. So Acelera has 2 years, and yeah, we've been doing a lot of programs. We have more than 250 startups in the process, 1.5 years. Okay.
That's a huge, that's a lot. Congratulations on all that work.
And sorry for my English. I'll catch it up later. Like in 10 minutes, I'll be better.
Your English is great. Your English is great, and I'll do my best to speak slowly. So
no, don't worry.
Okay. Can you? I want to talk a little bit about the different sectors that are in the region ecosystem there, and besides energy maybe being an obvious one. So other sectors, and then we'll move into maybe the support and what that system looks like in the ecosystem, as far as like universities, government, et cetera. So yeah, if you could give us you just mentioned fintech. What are some of the other emerging sectors that you guys specialize in?
Yeah, so what has been growing and what we're looking for is actually, we have a big country with around 30 million people, but underserved in terms of services, you know, so we don't have a lot of speciality. Most of the things are concentrated in the capital, which is Luanda, that has the 10 million people. So you put like in a ratio, 25% of the population is in Luanda, which is the smallest province. And then when you look at the country, is underpopulated, you know, in some areas. Like you have a province like Moxico that is the size, like 4 times the size of France, but has around 500,000 people. So it's really dispersed. So in terms of areas, if we focus, we're trying to bring up agriculture, so agri-tech sector, which can be huge and is underserved, like I said. This is because if we roll back the time and if we go to 1974, we used to be one of the biggest, so the first coffee producer in the world, the third banana producer in the world. We produced cotton, we produced a lot of other agriculture goods. And running on time, you know, and fast forwarding to 2020, what we have is that we import 90% of the goods that we actually eat, okay? So if you look at this map, I mean, there is huge agricultural potential that has been untapped, you know, and most of the oil most of the oil revenue is expanded into imports. So this is one of the issues that we're trying to tackle. But then we had a long civil war, okay? So most of the country infrastructure got really damaged. And we went through a rebuilding process starting in 2002 when the war ended. And the rebuilding has been ongoing. So running from the past government to this government. So it's pretty much a new country. It has 40 years. So infrastructure and logistics, it's a problem, you know. So you have little mobility. So we're trying to unravel the mobility and logistical sector, which has huge potential. So if you look at our coastal line, it has 1,500 kilometers, okay, running from Namib to up to Cabinda. And if you look at the potential, like on the other countries like Zambia and Congo and etc., I mean, ports can be a huge area. So we want to see how we can innovate going from ocean economy, you know, a port economy, and also tackling up these challenges on mobility and logistics. The other sector that I would mention is like I said, underserved in services. Financial services are an issue. So 70% of the people are in the informal market. You wouldn't know about this, Corey, so in the US, but you know, most of the things transaction here don't run into a formal market. What do I mean? Is that I actually have a company, but it's not formalized, so I do business with you, but it's not written anywhere. And the money flows, you know, not into bank accounts, but into by hand. So a lot of cash, it's a cash economy, you know, and a lot of losses are compounded into that. So we're trying to change this reality, having financial services, not only for that, not only for financial inclusion, but also to get people on board on them having the possibility on getting catering for a better education, health services, you know, insurance services for themselves. So what we want to elevate is actually the status on being a country where people almost lack everything to, you know, building up. So the challenge is there, also the opportunity. Instead of seeing this as doomsday, you know, and living on doomsday for the past like 45 years, we as the youth, what we look is that there's a huge opportunity to opening up the country, to opening up to startups and to people to come in. I mean, we're very friendly. Our dances are beautiful. I mean, they're taking over. Like if you look at Kizomba or other industries, they're taking over a lot of the new dances that are emerging. So, I mean, we're happy people. And what we want to do is actually build this region up from the past and the bad news that we had about us.
Yeah, we're finding that there's a nice more globalization of ideas and communication in these last months than ever before. Collaboration on innovation and the opportunity for different regions to connect with one another. And I think you and I were speaking a little bit about that before we started the event. You did mention a lot about infrastructure and the challenges of infrastructure. We usually we talk about that in the different ecosystems. Can you tell us a little bit more about the support for the entrepreneurial ecosystem, whether it be the accelerators, incubators, university, and is there collaboration between, is there government support? Do they have programs and money to help people get started in entrepreneurism?
Not yet, not as much as we wanted to, but I mean, the dialogue has been opened up. And what we're trying to do is actually build this ecosystem from scratch. I would put a stand that is started for around 4 years ago, so it's pretty new. and it takes time, you know. So to emerge this, to say, yes, there is collaboration, not as deep as we wanted to, but then we need to bring up the talent pool and the awareness on entrepreneurship, okay? Because you had a central economy until 92, so people are not really into entrepreneurship. They don't know what is this, so they don't have the practicality on doing a lot of the businesses to formalize. So you mentioned the opening up on this networks and the collaboration that you know, this new area has permitted us. And yes, so universities do collaborate with entrepreneurs, not as much as they would love to, but a lot of programs are emerging. Government is now dialoguing on making entrepreneurship strategy even some days ago. So we're trying to collaborate to come up with a startup act. So some of the hubs here are now connecting with policy making tools and organizations, so we can actually come up with a startup act that can be beneficial. But then in terms of support, yes, the big companies are now starting to invest into entrepreneurship and also government. So one of the programs that I can give you an example, which is not really common, but the central bank, since it lacked this inclusion, they actually launched innovation lab inside the central bank. So the ideas coming from a financial inclusion could come out of an incubator that they're doing in parallel. So yes, there are other initiatives running from other ministries and sectors, but not as much as the need that we have, because unemployment rate is really high. It's around 60%, like for the urban areas. So it's a worry. And we're a young country, so our medium age, it's 16 years old. So 60% of the population is under 15 years old. And then the other workforce, which is 40%, you know, are from 16 to like 60. But we don't have a lot of old people. So, I mean, we have labor to give and to put. So in terms of hubs collaborating, since it's too, everything is too young, yes, we're starting to see just like startup grind, the emergence of collaboration coming from overseas and people coming in and entrepreneurs coming in, not from Angola, that are attracted to the country and want to stay in and want to build their businesses, which is not the easiest, but yes, there are some who cut through and are here doing stuff.
So on that, with the rule of law, is it pretty safe to come and begin a company as a foreigner, or
yeah,
are these people coming from, say, Brazil, or like what is most common?
Most commonly are people who are close by in the region, and also on Portuguese speaking countries. Mm-hmm. But I mean, it's not hard anymore to opening up businesses. There's still a lot of bureaucracy, you know, on processes. But now you can have your business done. I would say, okay, government states that is done in 24 hours. It's done online, so you don't have to be there, and you can do it in a week. Okay, just put it a turnaround of a week for you to have your business formalized, which is not bad. Used to be like 2 years, you know, 10 years ago. So forget it. We actually got a lot better, you know, pulling out licenses so you can operate. So we got a lot better. And now you don't, before in terms of private investment running from foreigners, you needed to have a local partner, and you needed to invest at least $1 million inside the country. Not the same. You don't have to invest any money to start, okay? And you can build your business having any nationality, and you can actually build a startup or a business or SME locally. some sectors are dominated by foreigners, foreign people. I would say commerce and oil industry, of course, and some other areas are dominated by foreign. So although it's a hard country to do business still, and we're trying to improve, but yes, we were welcoming everyone to come in and to invest.
So if you have an idea there and you want to start a company, what is the most popular way to get it funded? Is there different networks of successful business people that are excited about investing in ideas, friends and family, banks?
Yeah, mostly friends and family. So interest rates are crazy, 24% a year. So forget it. You know, most people, you don't grow at that rate. You know, I mean, if you're growing 24% constantly in a business to pay up for interest rates, I mean that's something, you know, amazing. But so that actually pulls people back from the banking. So it's hard to get credit. Mostly for the new businesses, it's the friends and family. Not a, so the capital market is now coming up with venture capital. You know, they're trying to pass crowdfunding legislation so we can get it into place. So we had the informal crowdfunding. So if you wanted to do an informal business, there was crowdfunding like locally, you know, so people got gathered and, you know, exchange money. But now they're trying to cut through crowdfunding. And also we don't have, a stock market. And what we're trying to do is actually trying to see how we can actually lower the index and put some of these successful startups into an index market, into a stock market. So not a lot yet. There's the deal flow is still low, but improving, you know. So you can get funding mostly from, like I said, either grants or credit lines. People get it. But now with COVID and even before, so we're trying to make a push for diversification of the economy. So government actually put some packages together. So the interest rates are even lower than the 24%. They're lowered to the 8%. Mm-hmm. And then you can get guarantees on credits and etc. So the capital instruments are there, but it's not easy to get capital yet.
Sure. Before I move on to, I want to talk about like the talent pool, because you expressed how you have a large population of youth, and before we hit record, we were talking about the mindset of your region. Before we get into all that, I want to see if George has any questions for you right now.
Thank you. Jose, a couple of issues that are really interesting when we're beginning to look at startups. Corey mentioned the structure of law. You mentioned the bureaucracy. You mentioned also how easy it is for foreigners to come in and set up businesses. Why do you think the banking sector is not up to scratch yet? Why do you see that the intermediation process between the banks and the rest of the community is still holding back growth?
Mm-hmm. So I would put it on, I would put it like this, George. So firstly, I mean, they had an easy business. They didn't need to give credit to anyone, you know. They had the oil companies, an inflow of dollars, and what they did was exchange actually these dollars to kwanzas and then import goods. So it was an exchange business running on the banks. And so if I'm making up margins, if I start at a bank and I'm making up huge margins and I'm getting a huge dividend, you know, on this business, why worry myself on the huge upstake of risk of actually financing a company that doesn't have documents, that isn't formal, you know? So they stayed on the on their easygoing and they actually didn't move as quick as the market. The other thing that I would mention is that we didn't have a lot of professionality on businesses. And then the hedging in terms of currency was an issue. So, when businesses were coming in, they wouldn't finance themselves in kwanzas because the currency was volatile. So, and we actually used to have the banking financing in dollars. So people got financed in dollars. You wouldn't, but okay, you've been through Angola like we spoke before we started. But I mean, you used to transact dollars like it was the Kwanzas,
Sure, the economy was totally dollarized.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah, it was dollarized. So I would pay in a restaurant in dollars. I would earn my salary in dollars. And what happened was that we actually got an. I would like to put it like this. It sounds a lot sexier. An embargo, just like Cuba. Since Angola is a great friend of Cuba.
I remember that. Yep.
It's a great one. So we got an embargo from the US, and actually we're not able to import dollars anymore. And that created a huge constraint, and it was mainly done because of corruption. And we haven't been able to get around this until today, like 8 years have passed because of one small thing. So government officials actually own the stakes at the private banks. And what the IMF and the World Bank are saying is that either you correct this, so we can go ongoing with the dollars coming back in the economy, or you're not gonna get your banking sector with correspondence unless you do this.
And of course, you're absolutely right. Without an open and modern banking system, you are constraining the diversification of the economy.
Yeah, yeah,
for
sure. And every other single investment,
Sure, sure. Which again brings the next question is, there is successful businessmen in Angola. Yeah. And not only what we see in the press here in the Western world, but the success is, have they created a group of mentors? Are there efforts, and especially within women, are there efforts for these successful entrepreneurs to go around and create little clubs of success stories? Like, for instance, many of the female entrepreneurs and CEOs here in the US, they have gone out and support women's businesses and so on and so forth.
Yeah, it's a curious thing that you're stating. So last year, we actually organized Global Entrepreneurship Week for the past 4 years. And the theme of last year was actually woman, okay? So we got a whole bunch of female founders and CEOs to support others. Obviously, you have a huge problem. And I mean, I debate this even yesterday in the evening. I was debating this with 2 women, spectacular ones that one has a network of women running onto small startups, and the other one has like spoken word and poetry and etc. And she represents this. And we're speaking about like the issue on women, but it's not an Angolan issue. We actually accept women pretty well. I mean, women govern. We have a lot of people like women into power. Women sell, okay? Women don't have an issue like many of the Arab or African countries. So there is like, I would say, not a bad side on women. The support network, not yet, because we're trying to pull people in that the youth, actually you can believe on the youth to bring up businesses. And it's hard, the mentality, I mean, even running from households to companies is that you still need to be employed either in government or a big company, Whenever I made the jump from the banking sector to be an entrepreneur, they told me that, I was crazy. So it's hard. It's gonna get there.
Thank you. That's really interesting that at one point you are beginning to see the opening up of the economy slowly You're beginning to see efforts to diversify, and more importantly, you're beginning to see the various players now develop. It's exciting. It must be exciting for you to be in the very early stages of digital transformation and empowering people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yes.
and with you previously talked about the success you've had with working with startups, hundreds of startups already, and we talked a little bit before the event about the talent. If you could explain a little bit more about like where the talent is coming from, and the mindset of this youth, and then we've also heard from a lot of different chapter directors on the outlook of where things are headed right now. For example, we were speaking to someone in Pisa, Lucca, Italy, and they had said, our outlook is actually quite positive because we've already been through the worst and now we're better prepared. And now the government is stepping up finally, et cetera, et cetera. So I know that's a big question, but if you could share a little bit of a talent mindset and outlook.
So we have a lot of talent untapped, but we need to get more specialized in terms of talent, you know. And we had a lot of people with great education, like higher education, but that are unemployed or uncatered in terms of sectors. So we need to bring up more speciality on the talent, but there is an opportunity, a huge opportunity for them to build up businesses. Obviously, it's hard because we don't have a lot of innovation happening and a lot of the tech happening yet, but I think it's going to get there sooner than we think. So I really do believe that we're going to leapfrog some stages, like in terms of infrastructure. We're going to do that. So we're rebuilding in terms of sectors as well. So on the talent pool, it has to do with bringing people in, because although we're 30 million, I think we're too little for the dimension of the country. And then the other thing is it will take time because a lot of the people are young, you know. So sometimes you need experience, not only youth, but some experience, you know, on the talent pool. And what you see is actually some people getting out of the corporate world and the government and jumping into the startups and working with the youth. So we're working on this, on building this mindset, starting from high school, you know. So middle school, high school, bringing in a entrepreneurial mindset with skills, and then seeing that they have an opportunity other than, you know, getting unemployed or getting a regular job that doesn't pay much.
Sure. And so with all these founders that you've been working with, is there a challenge in switching them on to that entrepreneurial mindset? Or do they come already prepared with like let's rock?
They're really excited, but then they quit 3 months after this because I mean the support system is not there yet. Mm-hmm. So sometimes, like on programs, now with the COVID situation, I mean we had programs running online and demo days going online, and some people had issues with connectivity. Mm-hmm. That's infrastructure. So connectivity is still an issue in the city. So, I mean, on this demands, in some countries, you're not putting this as a blockage on me getting with you to doing this session together, you know. But then for these entrepreneurs, they still have these barriers. The other side is how hard for the product to go to market and access to market. So they need to be quick and to test quick and to fail quick. And sometimes the market to adopt, it takes more time than the normal. So the adoption, even though like most of the world adopted like telemedicine, healthcare, and etc., you still have like contrary voices that don't want to go there, even though everyone else in the world has jumped into this. So it's not easy to get products into the market. but you see a whole lot of excitement on the startups to emerge. You know, we had a winner, a really interesting winner. We did a program with the U.S. Embassy, local U.S. Embassy, a program that we actually trained 50 entrepreneurs, then down to 20, a cut down to 20, and then we actually gave prize money of $10,000. This ended last month, $10,000 as prize money to 5 winners. And one of them invested into tourism, which can be a huge sector, okay? And he's only doing like camping sites and then touring with tourists, but young people. So he found his target and he's gonna do quite well, you know? So yeah, the emergence of these startups is gonna come through.
Do you have any other stories of successes?
Yes, we participated in some. The other one is actually a startup that came out of one of our programs. The entrepreneur came in with an idea, like a base idea. And then 2 days after the acceleration program, he changed the idea. And what he did is actually, so we have wholesaling. And the wholesaling is that you actually buy your food in like big stacks. So this is the usual in the informal market. And there is a team called Socia, which is actually shareholder. You can say shareholder to the food. So since you cannot afford enough money to buy like a pack of 24 cans, then like outside of this wholesaling, you actually shout out, okay? They used to shout out like, oh, Socia for like Coca-Cola, imagine. So some guy would emerge and then say, okay, I want 6, and then the other 6, and he would buy at a price of a wholesale, okay, 6. So he transformed this into to technology, to an app, and he's growing like steadily, like huge numbers. So what he's actually doing is transforming the informal market to formal, and then he's getting like the high, medium clients, you know, consumers into the platform, consuming the lower end products, you know, on the same concept with technology, and he's growing like 100% a month. I mean, I've been in touch with him, and that's a big success story. And what he's actually doing is, one of the challenges is that we actually have local production. And since the dollar, so the oil price is connected with our budgeting. So the less dollars we export on oil, the less budget we will have, the less expenditure. So the issue is, how can we get actually local goods, produced local goods, okay, to come to the big centers of consumers like Luanda. So he's bridging that. He's like taking fish and fruits from places never been picked up before and bringing it to the app and distributing. So yeah, there's some good success stories coming here. The other one is, just quickly, a company that it's a big success story. And I was speaking to the founder, to the CEO yesterday. And one of the things that he mentioned is that he's like praying for COVID not to end. So there was like a boom on e-commerce, and he was one of the first platforms on e-commerce. Now he's like going to a marketplace. And just before COVID, he ran into a lot of debts, you know, with vendors. And he bounced back, you know, so it's one of the big success stories, won a lot of prizes, it's scaling. So yeah, some of them are good examples for other entrepreneurs to follow through.
Those are some really exciting stories. I really love it when there is an innovation on existing cultural norms and just bringing tech to it, which democratizes those are my favorite kinds of marketplace success stories. So
Yeah.
I know we have just a few minutes left before I ask you what I was going to ask, what I told you I was going to ask you. George, do you have any final questions or thoughts?
Yes, first of all, I would like to thank Jose Carlos for taking the time and explaining the evolution of his ecosystem. What Corey and I always do, we thank our participants and make sure that the collaboration continues beyond today's event. If there is anything we can provide you with, any support, any coaching, any training, any access, any additional ideas, please let us know.
Thank you.
We are blessed to be in the Great Lakes. This is the largest concentration of fresh water on the planet outside Lake Baikal. And that means a lot. That is, it gives us the opportunity to talk with all kinds of innovators, entrepreneurs, and investors. The last point that I would like to ask you, particularly since your last success story was a turnaround in a way, what do you see as being the next normal? In other words, as we go through this stop go because of COVID, and of course other pandemics are going to show up, there's no doubt about it. Do you see any areas, any features that will be defining the next 5 to 10 years?
Yeah. One of them is the way we work. It's going to change forever. I mean, we had a lot of square meters into office. We don't go to the office anymore. So the team is at home, and so we're going to have a possibility of showcasing our talent easier, in an easier way, which we didn't have before. I believe some of the sectors that are emerging, like pinpointing, can really change, like into technology, can really change the state on how we harvest goods. Like food security can be a huge thing. I'm a space enthusiast, so I just love how the space industry actually affects like the health sector and the food sector and etc. I mean, the first chapter for space, and I was speaking to some engineers, space engineers locally. So they want to run a simulation site for Mars here locally. So space sector, I believe, is the next frontier into this. But then commerce, you know, how on a globalized world where we used to travel, how commerce is going to flow around, because all the dynamics on how the goods were shipped and etc. Countries are closing up, just like us, and you know, just finding a way to survive within. So I think that the supply chains are going to be disrupted, and whoever can find a way out of this will have the next challenge. I like to look into humanity. So the big leaps into, you know, biotechnology, and the huge leaps into neuroscience, neurotechnology, and etc. can really be beneficial. And this is going to change, you know, AI, the big terms, you know. Normally they say that we speak about the big terms, but we don't have a clue about them, you know. We actually don't know how they work. But if you see how this can be disrupting to the future, I think the technology is going to come to our countries even faster than it has. Then connectivity, you know.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Obrigado, Jorge.
Yeah, we talk about this on occasion with different directors that see that this is an opportunity in globalization. You know, when we spoke about ideas and innovation, public health as a global concern rather than like regional or domestic is something that we're hoping can come out of this. Anyway, so the last question we like to ask, and I wish we had more time because this has been incredibly insightful, and I wish we had 3 hours with you. You're really great. Thank you so much. But so what can the Startup Grind community, the global Startup Grind community, individually and together do for your ecosystem and for you?
I would love to have a cohort coming in to Angola and invite you guys to come in. But since we have limitations, we can actually do it this way digitally. The second thing is more info, and maybe you're doing a great job, Corey, on going around the world and George, and interviewing people and knowing their stories. So maybe knowing more stories and the support, and with the skill set, you know, the mentoring and just the conversations with young entrepreneurs, having George being tapped with another entrepreneur can really be impactful. Like 1 hour can really make the whole difference. So yes, for sure, we're gonna engage more.
It's interesting you mentioned this, Jose, because this is exactly our next, so to speak, plan with Corey. The next level, the next round of global discussions is going to be in entrepreneurs that you select. Each one of the directors selects, and we will be hearing their stories. And the third level is from each one of the groups an investor. So we want to see both sides of the equation, the assets and the liabilities.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Well, again, thank you very much for participating. Really great to get to know you, make your acquaintance. And I know I can speak for George in the fact that we would absolutely be excited to come and join and build a cohort and some partnership. So
thank you.
One day when we can do that in person, we'll share a meal together, and it'll be awesome. So,
thank you so much.
So have a great weekend over there.
Thank you.
Truly grateful, and we'll talk again soon. Okay.
Thank you so much. Thank you, George. Thank you, Corey.
Bye, Jose.